On the 23rd of December, 1827, the brand new country of the United Mexican States and its first elected president faced an attempted coup d'etat. There were 4 demands given by the rebels, and 2 of these pertain directly to the U.S. minister or ambassador. Number 1, that he be removed from the country, and 2, that secret societies be banished. Joel Roberts Poinsett was the first U.S. ambassador to Mexico and was eventually expelled on January 3, 1830. Some have claimed that Poinsett's ineptitude was to blame for the poor relations between the two countries for years to come. In this video, we will highlight the most important things to know about Joel Roberts Poinsett, and we will answer the question, did he screw everything up? Number 1, and the first thing to know about Joel Roberts Poinsett, he was extremely well-traveled, a polyglot, and probably, just very smart. He went to France, Italy, England, Scotland, Germany, Russia, remote places like the Crimea. Probably no other Americans had been there at that point.
And as for languages, Poinsett,
he would pick up languages like my bestie picks up stray cats on the street. He would eventually master French, German, Russian, and Spanish. And beyond that, Poinsett was curious. He most famously discovered the poinsettia, but he really didn't discover it.
In Mexico, it was already known as the Flor de Nochebuena.
This would be Poinsett's claim to fame in the Americas. Most people don't know who Poinsett was, but they certainly know the plant. The second thing to know about Joel Roberts Poinsett is that he entered Mexico for the first time as an unofficial traveler. But in 1822, the U.S. was gravely disappointed to learn that
Mexico, which had just won independence from Spain,
had actually opted to become a constitutional monarchy and not a democratic republic. To add insult to injury, the guy who had first led the Spanish armies against the independence-seeking fighters actually switched sides to kick the Spanish out of Mexico and then made himself emperor. His name was Agustin Iturbide.
As for Poinsett,
he was sent to Mexico for 2 reasons: to assess Iturbide and the viability of his empire, and to buy Tejas from Mexico. Now, that doesn't sound like a very unofficial reason to me. Obviously, Mexican officials were suspicious of this unofficial traveler, and that would impact on our next episode. The third thing that we need to know about Poinsett, he was appointed ambassador in 1825. So his tour as an unofficial traveler came to an end, and he transitioned officially to ambassador. As Poinsett had predicted, the emperorship of Agustin Iturbide wasn't very successful. It lasted less than a year, and Mexico eventually became a new republic. So the U.S. was much more comfortable with an official relationship with the new United Mexican States. And as ambassador, Poinsett would kind of continue his old tricks. He was, as the U.S. was, obsessed with Texas, and he would continue to pressure Mexico officials about a potential sale. Still, he wasn't successful in this. However, he would have some important diplomatic success. Early as ambassador, Poinsett would lobby to pass a law that made it easier for non-Mexicans, so namely U.S. citizens who were mostly white and mostly slaveholders, to settle in northern Mexico or Tejas. But for those who already were suspicious of the U.S. and who already distrusted Poinsett, this battle simply confirmed that the U.S. was ambitious when it came to Texas and was expansionist by nature. Beyond merely the Texas issue, Poinsett would begin to ally himself with liberal forces, making the conservative new president and his allies nervous. Now, liberal and conservative at this point in history have nothing to do with their modern U.S. usage. Just forget it. To make it super simple, at this point in history, liberal meant mostly pro-democratic republic, anti-monarchy, and anti-church. Not anti-religion, but the idea that the church should have some official state capacity.
In the 1800s, conservative usually meant maintaining the large majority of existing social structure as well as some official capacity for the church in church-state relations.
Conservatives also were more comfortable with a strong central government, even if it meant having a constitutional monarchy. It was around these ideas that Poinsett began to dabble in the internal workings of Mexican elections, and this would really be his undoing as ambassador. You see, Poinsett was a Freemason, and that does not make him special. Many, if not most, early U.S. politicians were Masons. But the problem was he would introduce his own U.S. version of Masonry into Mexico, and it would be very successful. Freemasonry then and now involved cryptic and mystical rituals that were and kind of still are unsettling. Combine that with the political success that Poinsett would have in founding Masonic lodges, identifying candidates sympathetic to U.S. ideologies, and successfully supporting these candidates in their bids for election. This was a little bit too much for those in power in Mexico to withstand. They began to grumble, and eventually a formal request was sent to Andrew Jackson to remove Poinsett from office, and there was really nothing Andrew Jackson could do. He had to rescind his ambassador.
Now, if you're like me, you've never heard of Joel Roberts Poinsett. I hadn't until I picked up this book, The Mexican Reader. It's a collection of very short, very insightful essays on a wide variety of topics, but all related to Mexican history and culture, pop culture, and art. I plan on basing most of the videos that I'll produce around this book, at least for the foreseeable future. If you'd like to follow along with our readings, there's a link to the Amazon account. Any support you give through that affiliate link will be greatly appreciated. Or hit the like button and the follow bell. That'll help us a lot too.
Okay, so we have seen Mr. Poinsett. Is he responsible for the mess that became of U.S.-Mexico relations? Well, Poinsett repeatedly stepped on Mexican toes that were proud of their newly won independence. Poinsett really didn't make things any better, but no matter who would have been in Mexico, probably would have done the same things he did.
In our next chapter on Mexico, we will encounter Jose Vasconcelos, an early 20th century intellectual who believed that the unique blending of races and cultures in Mexico would eventually evolve into a cosmic race, one that would lead humanity into its best possible future.